Okay, Steve Burns here again. I wanted to share with you examples of what previous students have done. And as we take a look at this one, we can take a look at this. The vanishing point, I'm going to click right over here, is instead of outside the document bounds, it's inside the document bounds, I believe on both sides here. There it is, right inside the corner. And look at how much of a wide angle perspective you get here. It goes really wide angle. But you can see that everything conforms, including the windows, conform to the rules of perspective. And for this class, this is how we're going to create. So we're going to be in Photoshop. We're going to do compositing as we go on and work together, but we're always going to follow those rules of perspective. Okay, in the end, your final assignment is going to have to do with a 3-point perspective concept art scene. We'll get more into that a little bit later. Let's look at another example. Here's one, and you can see that this one, everything follows the rules of perspective. Now, except for this one right here. Okay, you can see the vanishing point lines. Everything pretty much follows except for that one. Immediately, your mind should say, okay, that doesn't look right. Something's wrong. Okay, we can see everything's following here. The bottom of this is following. This is slightly off here. This is where the student wanted to kind of do their own little thing, and I pretty much dinged them on that one. Okay, and if the following perspective was one of the criteria for the assignments, I would have dinged them on that. Okay, so be aware, follow your rules of perspective. Everything should work. Here's an example of one that student completed that has textures on it. We're going to be getting into this in just a little bit. We still have a little bit more work to do, then we'll start adding textures to our concept image. So using seamless textures and recreated the building. Actually, it first started with the vector shapes, and then they overlaid the textures on top of the vector shapes to start bringing architecture. We can see that right back here. Here's the original squares, and then we use seamless textures to actually place over these architectural shapes. Okay, so it's really as simple as that. And they put in their streets, their grass. We can see photographic textures being laid down for the grass, the gravel for this particular scene back here. This student didn't complete it, but I'm glad they didn't, because it's a good example so that you can see what we're doing is going to apply all the way across your workflow for your artwork, or even your concept art if you decide to go into filming or something like that. Now, they were paying attention enough to add a reflection of this face into the mirror of the buildings. I thought that was a nice little touch. And then we added colors, and we're going to be getting more into that a little bit later on. Okay, let's look at another example. Same concept. The student made the rectangular shapes first, and then they started adding the shadows as it would appear if it was in the real world. Okay, so now it starts to give it a little bit more depth. Now this one's slightly off a little bit. Immediately you can see it, but overall it's not bad. Let's kind of pull it on back. Overall it's not bad. Added in the street scenes, which was quite nice, and additional buildings in the foreground, including a little sky in the back. Here's another example here, and where they're overlaying buildings. Now keep in mind that each one of these buildings are in their own layer group. Okay, and that group is going to be treated like a single layer in the eyes of Photoshop, and we can place them and reorganize them to give a sense of how they're going to be overlaid. Once again, this student added shading and reflections to the building. You want to pay attention to those types of details as well as we start working together, as I'm going to start to demand that you pay attention to exactly what you're doing and why. Okay, so here's a little shadow from the building falling on the front. I think it could have diffused it a little bit more, but you know, I think they're getting the point. So the shadow's a little bit too harsh here. It's quite too harsh. All right, so let's go to another example. Here we are. Now they're getting a little bit more, crazy with the color here, but they're getting the example. If you look at all this, it looks right. It's a wide angle, so everything looks distorted to an extent. And we can see over here to the left in your palette, these are the colors that we chose to use for the main light as well as the shading area. And we'll talk more about that as we start to work together. All right, let's I want to talk next as to ways to inspire you, and to get and possibilities for new ideas. How do you get new ideas? Where do you go for those new ideas?